Welcome back to Girl Take the Lead, the podcast where we reimagine leadership, challenge the status quo, and share the real, raw, and meaningful conversations that help us break cycles, find our voice, and lead with intention. And I'm your host, Yo Canny. If you're listening at a moment when money feels heavy, stressful, or quietly overwhelming, you're not alone. And this conversation is arriving at exactly the right time. Today's episode isn't about becoming an expert overnight or having everything figured out. It's about building financial confidence intentionally. I'm so pleased to welcome Tiffany Irving, Senior Vice President and Wealth Advisor at Mesirow Wealth Management. With over 25 years of experience helping individuals, families, and nonprofit organizations navigate their financial lives with clarity and care. But Tiffany's story doesn't begin with spreadsheets or market charts. It begins with growing up in a single parent household, watching financial stress up close, and quietly deciding that independence, stability, and choice would matter deeply in her own life. In this conversation, Tiffany reminds us that money isn't a measure of worth, it's a tool. And like any tool, confidence comes not from avoiding it, but from understanding how to use it. So, Tiffany, welcome to Girl Take the Lead. This is going to be such a good conversation and about money.
About money. Well, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm excited to join you.
Yeah. We've done a few episodes on that topic. I think it's just so relevant right now because I do think a lot of people are suffering a bit in this area. And I think you'll bring them some insights and some wisdom and appreciate you being here. But let's begin, if you would, to introduce yourself to our viewers and listeners.
Sure. My name is Tiffany Irving. I'm a Senior Vice President Wealth Advisor with Mesirow Wealth Management. That's based in Chicago, Illinois. I've been in the industry for a little over 25 years now, providing comprehensive wealth management advice and some strategic investment solutions, working with high net worth individuals, families, nonprofit organizations. I'm a proud mom of three, so I'm a fierce advocate for educating and empowering women and girls around money and their finance. So I know we're going to talk a little bit about that today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what was your journey like? How did you get there to that area?
Yeah, I think this question gets asked a lot. And, some people have a money moment. For me, I like that you said journey because that's really it. Just growing up, I had a single mom and watching her kind of struggle to make ends meet. We were, blue collar background, parents divorced early. So she worked multiple jobs to make sure we didn't realize what was kind of going on at home, but it was not ever something we ever talked about. We didn't really talk about money growing up much. So for me, it was just kind of the outside looking in those experiences and saying, I want things to be different. I was always very highly focused on becoming financially independent. I never wanted to depend on anyone else, in that regard for money and finances. I wanted to make sure I had the ability to change jobs when I need to, whatever that might mean for me, whatever financial freedom means to you. I guess I saw that. I didn't have a name for it at the time, I guess, but it was definitely part of my mindset, I think, kind of growing up and watching what happened around me and making sure that someday I was going to have the stability and the comfort, and I wanted to make sure I could create opportunities for my family and my children that I didn't feel like I had. So I would say it just kind of motivated me all along. I'm a first generation college graduate, kept going, got my MBA, got my certified financial planner designation, certified exit planning advisor designation. So I think it really just kind of pushed me further along to keep wanting to educate myself and keep going. And so I think that really kind of set my journey for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was at a conference not that long ago, earlier, I guess this spring, where a woman I met said to me, like, what kind of, what's your why? How did you get here and what's your why? she said, but you have like 5 seconds. I don't want you to think about it. Just blurt out what comes to mind. And I said, people, purpose, passion. She said, well, that was
Mhm.
kind of fast. And I said, I hadn't really thought about it, but that's just kind of what came to me. And I think it's a function of, for me, people, it's just, that's what I love about what I do. I love building relationships and trust with individuals. I'm good at
Mhm.
math and finances. So that's always kind of, so how do I mold the two of those together and find a way to help people? I think I was generally kind of brought here to help people. And for financial advisors, the purpose of that, it's not just about the numbers. It's, providing advice and guidance with intent to help people reach their goals and objectives and find out what their purpose is. So I feel like my purpose is aligned with the clients that we work with. And I just genuinely, the passion there's, I just genuinely love what I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think coming from that background and that perspective, I just bring energy and focus and conversations to light, teaching people that money is really a tool to help them reach those goals and objectives, whatever they may be, short term,
Mhm.
long term. It
Mhm.
changes throughout our lives. As we know,
Yeah.
there's different ages and stages. And so, what our goals and objectives look like definitely vary over time. But I think that's it. It's kind of those pulling together the people, the purpose, the passion around what
Yeah.
I do.
And it sounds like you knew, like, okay, when I went to graduate school for business, I kn- I was I went into marketing and I went, oh, this is me. I loved it. I mean, you know, I just did so well in that field in our classes because I just loved it. And it sounds like you were like the finance person who just loved doing the line.
It
I wish
didn't
we
start that way, though, Yolanda. It didn't start that way. I always
no.
thought I would go into physical therapy or become a doctor. That
Oh,
was really my trajectory. But
interesting.
I did some retail jobs working at banks and doing that kind of thing. And then I started as the secretary for the president of a wealth management firm. And I was trying to work full-time days and put myself through college at night. And so he was just a great mentor to me. And he said, you know, let us help you. There's, DePaul, I went to DePaul downtown. There's their business and finance classes are in the evenings, so he just really kind of guided me through that process and
Uh-huh.
and working at the firm at the same time. I was like instantly knew this is kind of the route I wanted to take. I loved seeing what they were doing for the families that they served and the planning and the advice. And like I had just never seen any of that growing up. And I really didn't see it in my first couple of years at college before I found this firm that I was working at. So it was just a whole different avenue for me.
Yeah. Oh, well, it totally would have been for me. I
Yeah.
would have just,
Yeah, it was just something, yeah, we didn't talk about it at home and it's not something you're taught in school. So it wasn't like
yeah.
anyone said, hey, have you ever thought about money and investments and, as a career? And so
Yeah.
I do tell a lot of women I talk with now or girls who are interested in math and finance and money, like this is a great career path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that one of the things you think keeps women from pursuing, like just not having the awareness?
I think it's
Uh,
a very big part for sure.
uh-huh.
Yeah. I mean, it's getting better, it's changing, but we see it in the education we provide when we go onto college campuses for recruiting, there's still a lot less girls in
Uh-huh.
the finance major than there are boys. So, or young women and young men, I guess is a better way to say that. But I do think it's getting better. We're still as certified financial planners, there's only, I think, 21 or 22% of us nationally that
Uh-huh.
are women. So it's still a
Uh-huh.
pretty small number considering we're over half the population.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Definitely. Well,
we want to be more representative of our client base, that's for sure.
I wonder if it needs like better marketing so that
Yeah.
people, like I would say, I never thought that I had analytical skills,
Mm.
but good marketers actually are quite good at analysis.
Yes.
And sometimes I think there are ways to see something that you go, oh, I didn't realize that was using analytical skills, or, it's almost like helping them see, no, look at, you're really good at analysis. And perhaps that's, an avenue that you hadn't considered before.
Yeah. And you found marketing in college?
I did.
Yeah.
I was a psych undergrad, and I went and got my MBA. And I thought I wasn't sure I was going to make it until I had my marketing class. And then I went, I'm home. This is my home, And I remember our finance professor going, okay, all you artists and poets on this side of the room, all you econ majors over here, So there was definitely a separation of the artists and the poets, and I fell into that category proudly. It's like no problem.
Yeah.
um, but I think you're right. I mean, it just seems like if we could see ourselves, all of the aspects, like that analytical skill, that we
Hmm.
would begin to see, like, hey, we're pretty good at this, instead of
Yeah.
thinking, oh, I'm not good at math, so I shouldn't go in that field.
Hmm. Yes, I would agree with that. And obviously I took a lot of finance classes, but I would say the majority of those classes in college were geared towards, wanting to be a CFO of a big business someday, right? This is
Yeah,
all
yeah,
corporate finance, not necessarily personal finance. And
yeah,
now I think they ask those finance students to choose a path pretty early in their college
yeah,
career. So if they're interested in private wealth or investment banking or, and I think that's hard to know if you haven't been exposed to it, uh,
yeah,
which
yeah,
usually you don't get that exposure till at least college.
yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, what trends do you see there with regard to generations? I mean, we're talking about, Gen Zers, and are you seeing them? I think some of the trends do show that they are fintech savvy, that they're saving sooner, far sooner than I ever did.
Hmm.
When my Gen Z daughter says, "Oh, I'm putting some away," and I'm like, "You are?" Like, I think research shows that, boomers and Gen Zers just wait a long time before they actually start to save.
Yeah, I think, well, it just is also a function of societal shifts, economic shifts, right? The cultures you're brought up in. So I think that all plays a big part as well. So I definitely see, and I'm excited about Gen Z as well. I have two daughters that would qualify in that Gen Z uh, time period as well. So seeing how they approach, and they are pretty young in that. I've got one of my oldest is about to be a senior in college, and my second is a sophomore in college. So they're not
Mhm.
quite
Yeah.
off the payroll and on their own yet. They still have a
Uh-huh.
lot to learn. They're both very different in terms of their financial psyche, even though they were raised by a financial advisor. Um, but I do see, I think what I'm excited is that they're definitely using a lot more technology, a lot more social media platforms. They're super creative about the ways they make money.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a traditional job as we're talking about here, 9 to 5 in the business realm or whatever it may be. My oldest is a creative, so it'll be interesting to see where she ends up. But how she makes money is going to be very different than how I've made money in my career. So I think that is really important. I think they're trying to get financial literacy a little earlier. They're
Yeah.
interested, they want to know about it. They're talking to each other. They talk to me sometimes about investments, not that they have a whole lot, but if I'm saving this or paying for this for college, when do I start investing? Kind of all of
Yeah.
those questions, which I think are interesting.
What
Um,
what about Gen Xers? I mean, are they sprinting to get the money for retirement? I mean, are you seeing that? Like, I felt
shifting.
like I was doing that after the kids, were done with college. I was like, okay, sprint time, like
Now it's
save
time.
every
Now it's
penny we
time. Save
can.
every penny. Yeah. I think it's also a function of our age and stage of life. As I mentioned earlier with planning, I think things shift, right? They know they're young enough that Gen Z or they're young enough to get started now. And honestly, the power of compounding, as we all know, I mean, it could have
Yeah.
huge rewards for them long term. The earlier they start, the better. I think our generation, Gen X, when we look at that, we're kind of in this. We talk a lot about the sandwich generation. Our kids aren't necessarily off of the payroll yet. We're
Mhm.
trying to save for our own retirement. If
Right.
we're blessed enough to still have our parents, we're worried about caregiving for them in their later years. And
Mhm.
if they're not financially sound, how are we going to
Mhm.
manage all of those things? So I think there are so many different directions still pulling at us. But I think that we're getting better than our parents at talking to each other about money. We're trying to take away that the money is taboo. It's okay to talk about
Yeah.
finances. Let's share resources with each other, with our friends. So I think that that's changed a little bit, definitely, from my mother's generation, where they really just didn't talk about it at all. And now it's a
Yeah.
different conversation. I think we had a lot more dual income households than maybe our parents had. And in traditional gender roles or family models, maybe the wives weren't working until later when the kids grew up, but they were a lot more stay-at-home moms in that generation and things like that. So for them, I think a lot of those financial discussion for many women in that generation was maybe handled by their spouse, and they were fine with that. Whether that's through a death, unfortunately, or a divorce or something happens, where the women now are stepping into that role and kind of um, relearning finance, starting with budgeting and then how am I going to pay things and which accounts do I take distributions from and all of those things. So
Uh-huh.
it's not that they
Is
can't do it or they couldn't do it. They just that role was being handled by their partners.
yeah.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean by breadwinner mold? That there was um, a partner or a spouse that typically brought home the income, or is
Yes.
that
Yes. I think that was kind of the typical breadwinner mold
yeah.
that we would see in the boomer generation. As I said, with Gen X, you saw a lot more dual income households. So I think that uh, gender lens is transitioning over time. I think we still see it in our Gen X a little bit in some cases and not all. But I think that was typically, if I was talking about breadwinner, thinking and the man works outside the home, the woman is the nurturing, caregiving, and um, mom doing the errands, but still, honestly, even though they don't realize it, making a lot of the financial decisions for the household for sure.
Yeah.
So I
Hunting
just
and
think that
gathering
there's
isn't
just yeah, I think it's more of just gender roles and kind of culturally what that breadwinner definition was, I think is
yeah.
shifting over time. And then when you talk about kind of the female breadwinner, right, it really kind of shifts all of that on its head because, well, what does that mean and what challenges do we face in that regard? And so I've kind of sat in that role. My husband's been a stay-at-home dad since our kids were born. So he's been home full time and I've been in the workforce. But again, we see a lot of families where they're dual working parents. And so the breadwinner in that situation, I guess, would be whoever was who's bringing in more money in that case. But I think it boils down to the partnership that's created and what
Mhm.
role
Mhm.
each spouse
Mhm.
wants to take in that partnership.
Uh-huh.
I think the challenges with the female breadwinner role is just really, um, in a lot of cases, it's the provider and the caregiver and who's handling house duties and kind of how do you split up all of those duties, whether you're dual income or if it's flipped on its head and the mom is the one working and the dad is the one staying home. So I just
Yeah.
think that challenges some of the gender norms that at least we grew up with.
Right.
Certainly our parents grew up with, and we grew up in Gen X. But seeing how that transitions to the next generation, especially in Gen Z, I don't think that at least for my daughter so far, we'll see where they go. They fully intend to work and participate in those financial and money conversations in their families.
So if we know that there's
Mm.
that pressure for income and some of the problem relates to a lack of awareness, I would think communication, based on what you were just talking about, is really critical. What who whoever your partner is, that you understand each other's values around money and being able to talk about that would be very important.
Mm.
What else do you see there? Like what are some other solutions?
Yeah, I think that's a huge aspect around partnerships and communication is around the money and finances. And it's very different for every family situation because We see some people who are coming into maybe a second marriage, or we see some people who are choosing to be partnered and not married, or there's all different ways of building families these days. But the reality is just having the conversation around, again, how are we going to pay our bills? How do we make our ends meet? What's important to us from a saving and investment perspective? Are we early in life? Maybe we're talking about paying down student loans and college debt and saving for a home. But then beyond that, what are we doing for our long-term savings? Because we know that we're going to need dollars in our retirement years from now. So
Mhm.
it's kind of those conversations. And to your point, where just as you asked me what my journey with money is, I think it's important for partners to talk about that as well, because in some families there may have been a lot of education around money and finance, and others there have been no conversations.
Uh-huh.
Or you come from different backgrounds. Maybe one comes from a wealthier family and someone comes from, a little bit more of money scarcity. And so those mindsets are very, very different. So I think it's important to kind of align the habits that you both have, create good habits together, and have that conversation. I think that's going to be really, really important.
Yeah, I agree. Because I do think it's an area of tension and it can go to scarcity pretty quickly.
Oh, absolutely. Money is stressful. Even for financial, money is stressful, right? Money makes the world go round. We need it in our daily lives. And so
Yeah.
trying to teach people, though, not to be afraid of it and learning how to use it as a tool, um, I think is a really good place to start.
Yeah. Very good. Well, is there anything else that we didn't cover that you would like to leave with our listeners today? Start early, I guess.
Start early was one we talked about. I mean, and I would say there's a lot of money myths out there about women and finances and building confidence. So we talked about having a conversation with your partners. A lot of people use money dates, um, which my husband has no desire to go on a money date with me ever. He does not like talking about money and finances, but it's important to have at least those from time to time. One of the things I talk about is making sure that you both understand what you own, where you own it, how to access the information, whether that's passwords, all of that. Both
Mhm.
partners need to be engaged in that conversation, because it becomes very difficult when you're in an emotional mindset. Again, whether that's death, disability, divorce, things happen.
Yeah.
And so when you're in an emotional turmoil, it's not a great time to be trying to find that information or figure out where you're going to get the funds to pay XYZ bill, whatever that might be. So we talk about making sure you're both engaged in those conversations. It's important too when you're building out those wealth management plans, for the two of you sitting down and talking about, to your point, what are your goals and objectives? And we often find people might have similar goals and objectives when you're talking to a couple, but they might prioritize them a little bit differently.
Mhm.
So what does that look like, or how far apart are you in terms of what you want, life to look like in 3, 5, 10, 20 years, together, and how you're going to get there. So I think that's important. Using those, whether they're money dates or meetings with your advisor or coach or whomever it is, to say, here's the plan as we've clearly written it out and our steps to get there. Are we on
Mhm.
track? And if we're not, why? Did our expenses go out of budget? Did we have an emergency situation come up? Maybe it's just the market performance hadn't been there for your assets that are invested, and do you plan to make changes there or stick to the strategy? Having the conversations with your advisor along the way, I think, is really important as well, because you want to make sure you're on track. So if you set a goal and do nothing to get there, that's basically just a wish. So
Yeah.
really outlining steps to help you get there, I think, is important. um,
What are, you mentioned advisor a couple times in there, and I know, you being a wealth advisor, what are some questions you would suggest somebody ask when
uh,
they're looking for an
for an
advisor?
advisor.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it's important, to know what you want out of a relationship as well. But I think it's important to ask, first of all, obviously, their experience and expertise is important. There's a lot of great resources and information out there, but just as is with any information you find, make sure you're getting it from a credible source. I would say
Mhm.
is important. understand their structure, their fee structure, and how they get paid, I think is an important question. Um, Understanding how often they plan to communicate with you. What does a relationship look like? What will their services be? What will their deliverables be?
Mhm.
And how often will I hear from you as my advisor?
Mm.
I think those are really important conversations to have as well.
Oh, good.
Mhm.
Terrific. So,
Yeah.
how can our listeners find you and follow you and talk to you some more
Oh,
about?
sure. I have so much more to say. I could talk for days.
Yeah.
You could tell I'm passionate about this, but just want to make sure people get the right resources to make sure, some of the things I hear is I'm not good with money or, money isn't my lane or investing is too risky for me. So I think a lot of that comes from lack of knowledge. So finding ways to educate people, I'm just so passionate about that. I'm just so
Yeah.
passionate about
You
that.
know what? When you said that, another question came to me before we kind of wrap things up here. But
Sure.
I can imagine a lot of people will go, I'm not wealthy enough to have an advisor.
Yes.
Like the wealth word is like for somebody else and not for me. What would you say to somebody about that?
Yes. Money, finance, wealth, however you define it, wealth means something different to everyone. I think that's the first and foremost. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm a billionaire or a millionaire or so
Right.
I would say looking for when you're talking with advisors also, excuse me, looking for what their minimums are, what do they charge? There are some advisors who do planning that don't manage assets. There are advisory firms such as us. We do both. We start with planning, but we also manage assets. Um, but finding out kind of what their minimums are. But there are so many ways that you can get started. Again, even my girls, right? Trying to find those larger institutions. We all know that they're out there, whether that's, I don't Fidelity, Merrill Lynch, all you can get started for basically $100. And that's a great way, especially for young women, to dip their toe in and start to learn a little bit about investing and risks and how the market works. Because if you're just putting a little bit in, then you also start to pay a little bit more attention to what's happening with it. So I think that's a good way to kind of dip in. So I would say again, don't hesitate because you're afraid you don't have enough wealth. I think that you really have to start planning early. And even if I say early, even if it's later, if you haven't done a written wealth plan and you're 45 or 50 or whatever that age may be, and you're thinking, I'm, 10 years from retirement, I think, or 15, those are questions that a plan can help you answer. So it's never too late to seek that advice. I think is one thing. But yeah, it is a great question. And I would say, 50 bucks. I've got little,
Yeah.
my youngest
Everybody
is
can be wealthy.
everyone can be wealthy. I've got my fourth grader invested with his little birthday money, right? Just so that he can kind of see what's happening with it.
I think that's a great idea though,
It's not
because
much money. It's right.
you're
You
right.
can open those small accounts.
And you can learn some of the distinctions and keep asking
Keep
questions.
asking questions.
I would say that would be my biggest thing. Our advisors are so patient with me because my husband gets it right away, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, what does that mean exactly? Can we back up a
No,
second?
absolutely.
But
I,
asking a
I
lot of
always say there's no
questions.
dumb questions because if you've never been exposed to it, how would you know the answer?
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
like just as I'm not a doctor or a lawyer, I can't answer those questions, right?
Right. So I don't think we answered the question of how people can
Oh,
find you. So let's do
please.
that.
Yeah, let's do that. You can find me on LinkedIn, Tiffany Irving. Search me there. We have our website is www.mesirow.com. So you can find me there as well, along with my team information. That's all out there. And you can also just call me directly, 312-595-8130. I'm always happy to answer questions or sit down and have an introductory call or consultation and see what it is we're trying to accomplish for you.
Super. So
Absolutely.
I'm always interested when I hear when I have some financial folks on the show because I expect that when you answer this next question that you're going to answer it a certain way, but I'm always surprised. So What would you tell your younger 20-something self today?
Well, aside from what we already said about invest early, so I'll take that one off the table since we already said it. I would say be bolder, be more courageous, more confident. Like the worst thing that can happen is that you're going to fail. And failure is a scary thing, but failure is absolutely the best thing there is, I think. And I think
Yeah.
It's hard to feel that way in the moment, but that's how we grow. That's how we learn. And ultimately, I feel like it creates a way for greater things.
Yeah.
So, not necessarily from the investment side, but if there's something out there you're thinking about taking a risk, obviously a calculated risk, be smart about your decisions, but I just think don't be afraid to fail, because I think failure is how we succeed.
Yeah. Super.
Yeah.
So I know you had a chance to get to our online store and you picked something for yourself. What was it?
Did. The store was great. Those cards do you make them? Do you create
Yeah, I
them?
do. I just
Oh,
have,
they're fabulous.
they're part of my passion. Like I try and tie them to the podcast as well. So I was just envisioning one where I could put snarky cat with money coming out of his
Yeah, we
head.
need a money card. I know there is not a money card out there, but we need to find a money
I
card.
definitely need to do a money card because I've had probably 3 or 4 guests on now who are, sending us, the universe is sending us messages like, this is not, we can handle this. We can do, there's no need to suffer over money. And it's all, and I'm thinking like, yeah, I haven't done anything like that for the store. So I'm going to see if I can design something. If I do, I'll send it to you right away. But
Yes.
which one did you?
I liked the your coffee friend tag.
Oh yeah. No,
Mine,
I don't
because
think
I
anybody's
cherish
chosen.
so much my book club and my girlfriends, and sometimes I just, reach and be like, we need a cup of coffee.
I love that.
They
I love
know.
that one
That's what we
too.
do for each other.
Oh, that's so cool. I really like that one too. And I think you're the first guest I've had that chose that. So
I love
I'm
it. I
glad.
love it.
I'm
It
glad to
grounds
make it
me.
for you.
Right.
And meanwhile, I'll try and think of Snarky Cat somehow making having money
Making some
coming out.
money. Somehow he needs to make money.
I love it. I love the idea. All right, my darling. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Girl Take the Lead, because you are definitely taking a lead in this field and lifting all of us with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Yolanda. I was excited to be here. Have a great evening.
You too. My sincere thanks to Tiffany for joining us and bringing such clarity, generosity, and calm wisdom to a topic that so many of us carry quietly and often alone. Tiffany reminds us that financial confidence isn't about knowing everything. It's about staying engaged, asking questions, understanding what you own, and making choices that align with your values, especially in partnership. This episode leaves us with something steady and actionable. Here are 3 takeaways to carry with you. 1, financial confidence is built intentionally through clarity, communication, and small, consistent choices. 2, partnership matters. Knowing your money story and sharing it creates trust and alignment. And 3, it's never too early or too late to create a plan that supports the life you want. If you'd like to connect with Tiffany, check our show notes and you'll find all the information you need there. As always, thanks for listening, for sharing these conversations, and for being part of a community that values intention, courage, and thoughtful leadership. And coming up next on Girl Take the Lead, we'll be joined by Vanessa Confessori, a brand marketing and experiential leader by day and deeply human storyteller by life. Vanessa has spent more than 20 years designing unforgettable brand experiences and global activations, while also navigating motherhood, partnership, recovery, and the invisible mental load so many of us women carry. She's also the creator behind Sober Spouse on TikTok, a space she never intended to grow, but one that became a lifeline for people seeking honesty, hope, and real connection around recovery and relationships. I can't wait for you to hear this conversation. I saw Vanessa post something on LinkedIn, which you can hear about in the episode. And I said to myself, this girl has to be on the show. She's so great. She is vulnerable, she's kind, and such a truth teller. So join us again. Until then, take a breath. Start where you are. Choose clarity over fear. And remember, confidence grows when we lead our lives intentionally. Talk soon. Bye.